Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be doing another book haul. So I do book hauls on my channel generally every quarter, so the books that I'm going to be talking about today are books that I have acquired in April, May and June, so the last 3 months, and I acquired quite a lot of books in the last few months, more than I intended. Most of these were birthday presents or review copies. It was my birthday back in May and I got quite a lot of books for my birthday or got book vouchers which I therefore bought books with, and I also did get quite a few review copies in the last few months. So there are quite a lot of books on this list. Over April, May and June I acquired 27 books, which is more than I would like to acquire in 3 months. Like, I don't have enough space in my flat to acquire that many books every 3 months, so hopefully the next 3 months will be quieter on the book front. Anyway, 27 books to talk about, so I will get straight into them. And I will start off, as I usually do, with review copies that have been sent to me by publishers. One book I was sent, I think back in April, was The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, and I have actually read this since and really enjoyed it. Basically, this is about 2 people, Tiffy and Leon. The book splits between them, and they end up in a sort of weird flat share where Leon works nights and Tiffy works days. So Tiffy has the flat between like 6 in the evening and 9 in the morning and on weekends, and Leon has the flat between 9 and 6 during the week, because that's when he's off, and then he spends the weekends with his girlfriend. So they've never met, but they share a house and they share a bed, sleeping in it at different times, and they like leave each other post-it notes and get to know each other through post-it notes. It's really fun, really lovely and enjoyable, but also with like some darker, complicated themes underneath. Very grateful that the publishers sent me a review copy because this was absolutely great. Then, as a lot of you will know from having watched other videos on my channel, this year I read along with the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction, which is a prize that I really like, and I read everything on the shortlist and quite a few of the books on the long list. And the people at the Walter Scott Prize very kindly sent me 3 books that I was having trouble getting hold of through the library or elsewhere. They sent me Now We Should Be Entirely Free by Andrew Miller, which is a brilliant historical fiction book set in the Regency period that I absolutely loved. This was my favourite to win the prize, though sadly it did not win the prize. And just, yeah, I would highly recommend this book. It's really engaging and exciting and dramatic, and yeah, I'll link my review video on this down below. And then they also kindly sent me Little by Edward Carey and Dark Water by Elizabeth Lowry. I haven't read either of these yet, though I am hoping to get to them soon. This is set in the late 18th century and I think kind of centres around Madame Two Swords and waxworks, which sounds kind of cool. And this is set in the 19th century, partly on a ship and partly in an asylum, so this sounds really interesting as well. I then was also sent The Girl Aquarium by Jen Campbell, which is a poetry collection by Jen, who many of you will know on BookTube and whose channel I'll link down below. I have already read this and I reviewed it in my last wrap-up. I really enjoyed it. There are some stunning poems in here. I think my favourite one was The Angel of the North, which I just thought was fantastic, so yeah, would highly recommend this too. Then Sphere very kindly sent me a proof copy of After the End by Claire Mackintosh. I haven't got to this yet, but I am hoping to get to it soon because it sounds really interesting. Claire Mackintosh has been mostly known for her crime before, but she's moved into women's fiction, and so having not read any of her crime but enjoying women's fiction more than I enjoy crime, I thought this would be quite an interesting read. And it follows a married couple and what happens to their marriage after they have to make a very difficult decision regarding their son. And then I was also kindly sent a review copy of God's Children by Malby Roberts by Hono Press, and this novel sounds really fascinating. It is a kind of historically fictionalised account of a nurse who lived in the Victorian period and the early 20th century and what she did with her life. It just sounds really interesting, and I'm looking forward to getting to this soon. So those are the review copies that I have received in the last few months, and now I'm on to books that haven't been given to me as presents. Some of these were birthday presents, so some of these were like other presents slash things that people gave me when they didn't want them anymore. So this is Territory of Light by Yoko Tsushima. This was given to me by my friend Ellie, who's kind of clearing out her bookshelves and didn't want this book anymore, so has given it to me. I really like Japanese fiction. I'm currently trying to read 1 Japanese fiction book a month-ish, so I thought this would be a good one to add to my list. It's about a woman and her young daughter kind of starting life again after her husband has left her, and it just sounds really interesting. Then I also have Havisham by Ronald Frame. One of my friends saw this at a library book sale, saw that it was 50p and thought of me, so got it for me, which is very kind. This, as you might imagine from the title, is a Great Expectations retelling focusing on the life of Miss Havisham, especially her youth sort of before Great Expectations begins. And I'm very interested in Great Expectations and in literary retellings, and I enjoy Miss Havisham as a character, so I think this will be a really interesting one when I finally get to it. I then also have 2 books that were given to Nick and I jointly as Easter presents from Nick's parents, and I am denied about whether or not I should include these in this haul because they are like presents jointly belonging to Nick and I. However, I really want to read both of them, so I feel like they are going on my TBR, so I feel like I have to include them. And that is Circe by Madeline Miller, which is a Greek myth retelling, which you'll probably have heard of because everyone on BookTube is a bit obsessed with this. It sounds really interesting. And also Transcription by Kate Atkinson. I really like Kate Atkinson. I read her novel Life After Life years ago now, before I started BookTube, and adored it. And I just haven't read much by her since. I read a short story collection by her, which I didn't especially love, but I'd like to read more of her novels, and I've heard very good things about Transcription. It is set in the Second World War, and I really like historical fiction, so I think this will be a really interesting read. On to books that I received for my birthday. One of my friends kindly got me this. This is Catherine Mansfield's The Garden Party and Other Stories, and this is Every Man Library edition. I really love Catherine Mansfield. I think I've read probably the majority of stories in this collection before, but I don't own a physical copy of Catherine Mansfield, so really looking forward to having this on my shelf and dipping in every now and then. My friend Ellie for my birthday got me this. This is another Japanese novel, and this is Tokyo UNO Station by Yu Muri. This sounds really interesting. It follows one man's life throughout the 20th century and kind of his involvement in Japanese history. I'm really interested in Japan and Japanese history, and this is another good one to go on my list of Japanese books to read this year, so really looking forward to getting to this soon. On to some books that were birthday presents from my parents. I have The Night Watch by Sarah Waters, which I'm very excited to get to. I love Sarah Waters. I've read 3 of her books before, and I think she is amazing. This is set in World War II, and I believe this is the one of her books that works backwards in time plot-wise, which sounds really exciting. So really looking forward to getting to this at some point soon. I also have An Atlas of Impossible Longing by Anuradha Roy. Earlier this year I read another novel by her, All the Lives We Never Lived, which was on the Walter Scott long list, and I really loved it, so I really wanted to pick up something else by her. And this follows one family and the various characters within it in a small town in Bengal, and just sounds really interesting, and I'm desperate to read something else by her. Then I also have The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. Now the main thing I can tell you about this is that Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures said it was brilliant, and she said it was brilliant in such a way that made me think that I would think it was brilliant too. It is a historical fiction novel set in the 17th century following one woman's life and her deviation from what society expects from her, I gather. Sounds absolutely fascinating. I'm really excited to read it. Then I also have Frog Music by Emma Donoghue. I love Emma Donoghue. I've read 2 of her books, Room and The Wonder. The Wonder is genuinely one of the best books I've ever read. I loved it so much, and I really want to pick up something else by her, especially her historical fiction. And the only thing I really know about this book is that it is set in San Francisco, Chinatown in 1876, and that is enough for me to be very curious. I then have The Glasstown Game by Catherine M. Valente. I read Radiance by Catherine M. Valente last year and adored it a lot. It was an absolutely incredible book, so I was really keen to pick up something else by her. And this is a fictionalised account of the Bronte siblings and their adventures in the world that they made up when they were children, which sounds wonderful. I do know that Amanda Center recently read this and didn't love it, which makes me slightly nervous, but I also loved Radiance so much that I feel like I have faith in Catherine M. Valente, and I'm very curious to see how she examines the Brontes. And I know that she can pull off weird things as far as I'm concerned, so I'm curious, I'm excited, we'll see how this goes. And for my birthday, my fiance Nick gave me this. This is the Penguin Book of Japanese Short Stories, which is, as it says on the tin, a collection of Japanese short stories. There's quite a range in here, which I think should be really interesting. I think I've read some things from some of these authors before. The Tanazaki's in there, Banani Yoshimoto's in there, Yoko Ogawa's in there, and a few other names I recognise, so I'm really looking forward to dipping into this. Like I said, I really enjoyed Japanese fiction, so this should be really good fun. Then the other thing that gave me for my birthday, which is very exciting, is a book subscription to Mr. B's. So Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights is a bookshop in Bath that I'm very fond of, and one thing they do, among various other exciting things they do, is a book subscription service where you can get sent a book every month for a few months or a year by them. And so I have a 3-month subscription currently, so every month from June, July and August they are going to send me a book in the post, and what they do is when you sign up for the subscription you have to answer a really long survey about what kind of books you like, and then the books are specifically tailored to you, which is really cool because it's a really detailed survey so that they have your reading taste really clear. And the book they sent me in June was this is Nagasaki by Eric Frey, which I really enjoyed. It's a French translated novella set in Japan about a man who discovers something weird going on in his house where he lives alone, but every now and then things move slightly and he's like, am I being haunted? Is there someone else here? Is someone breaking into my house? I don't know what's happening. And you kind of follow what goes on from there. I found this really interesting. Then I also got a few book tokens for my birthday from various relatives and bought a few books with them. One is The Clockmaker's Daughter by by Kate Morton. I really like Kate Morton. I loved her books, The House at Riverton and The Forgotten Garden as a teenager. They were two of my favourite books, and I just haven't read anything by her for ages, so I thought I would pick up her latest one, The Clockmaker's Daughter, which sounds really interesting. It's set in the Victorian period, there's clockwork, there's mystery. I think I'm going to love this one a lot. I then also bought The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. So I have read this before, and it's one of my favourite modern novels. I love it a lot, but I don't own a physical copy because I'd read it on Kindle, and I just really wanted to own a physical copy for ages, so I thought this was a good time to buy a book with book tokens that wasn't adding to my TBR, and just make sure that I actually have a physical copy of this book because I love it so much that I want to own it. This, if you don't know, is an amazing book by J.K. Rowling, which is set in a small town and follows various characters in this small town and how they all relate to each other. And I love it more than Harry Potter, just saying, like, and I love Harry Potter a lot, so this is a novel I adore. Like, I wept for like a solid 20 minutes when I finished this book. It's incredibly emotional. It's very Victorian in its setup, though it's set in the present day, and it's like a brilliant novel of social critique, examining British society as it is currently, especially small town life, and it's just amazing, guys. If you haven't read this because you were worried because you love Harry Potter and you didn't know if you'd like it that much, you should read this because it is absolutely incredible. Like, this is a fantastic book. I think it is the best thing J.K. Rowling ever wrote, and I love Harry Potter a lot, so that is saying a lot. And then also with one of my book tokens, I picked up this is Hot Mess by Lucy Vine. Earlier back in May, I went to an event at Waterstones Tottenham Court Road with Aisha Malik, who's one of the authors who I work with where I work in publishing, Zaffa, and Lucy Vine and Ben Aranovich and Caroline O'Donoghue. And at this event they were discussing chick lit and genre and the certain assumptions we have about chick lit and women's fiction as genres. I made a whole kind of like video response to this event talking about genre, which I'll link down below, which is one of my favourite videos I've made all year, I'm gonna say, even though I was very nervous about posting it, but it provoked a lot of really interesting discussion, and I'm really grateful for that, and it was really interesting to see what people said, and it was quite a fun video to make too. So anyway, that's beside the point, but basically at this event Lucy Vine was talking about her book, and it sounded really good fun and really incredible, so I thought I would pick it up. And this kind of looks at a young woman called Ellie kind of getting on with her life and struggling with her life in London as a young woman, and everything's kind of slightly going wrong, but she's kind of okay, but is she really okay? And it just kind of follows her. I think this is going to be really good fun, and I'm really looking forward to getting to it. Another book I bought with birthday vouchers is this. This is Unequal Affections by Lara Ormerson. Now, this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, which I'm really excited to read in Jane Austen July. In order to explain what this is about, I need to slightly spoil the middle of Pride and Prejudice, but I'm assuming a lot of you know the plot of Pride and Prejudice. If you don't, then you can tune back in when this book is gone from the screen. Basically, this book follows a potential alternate reality Pride and Prejudice version where Lizzie accepts Mr. Darcy the first time he proposes. I mean, I'm just really curious to see how this works. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm really hoping it's well done because the premise is so good, and I'm hoping to get to this in Jane Austen July and let you know what I think about it at the end of the month. Finally, I have the 3 things I actually bought myself, which were not presents or review copies in the last 3 months. One of them was an audiobook, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I have already read, and it was brilliant, and it was absolutely incredible, and you've probably heard a lot about it. It follows the lives of a mythical band called Daisy Jones and the Six in the 70s, but it is written in the form of interview transcripts, which means it translates brilliantly to audiobook form. It's one I would highly recommend. I also got myself a Kindle copy of Widow Barnaby by Frances Milton Trollope. Now, Frances Trollope is the mother of Anthony Trollope, who's one of my favourite authors, and I've been meaning to read something by her for ages, and so when, at the beginning of June, Kate Howe said to me, "Oh, I'm reading this currently, would you like to do a spontaneous buddy read?" I said yes and started reading it. At the point of filming this, I'm only about 10% through, so I haven't read very much, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't feel like I'm far enough through the story to say what's happening, because Victorian novels tend to get to their premise quite late, but currently I'm kind of following a family and their fates along, and I think it's going to be a really interesting book. And then I also bought myself a copy of Olive by Diana Mullet-Craik. Now, this is a novel I have already read. I read it last year for Victober. I read a copy on my Kindle and I just loved it. Like, it's one of my favourite books from the last few years, one of my favourite books ever. And it was just amazing, and I just completely fell in love with the story. It follows a woman called Olive from her childhood into her adulthood. Olive is born with a deformity in her spine, which means she doesn't look like all the people around her, which means she's kind of told from a very young age that she's not going to have the same life as other women, and that she's never going to get married, that she's never going to have kids, and she has to find something different to do with her life. And the book kind of looks at the way that the people around her treat her and how that affects her, and how her physical deformity kind of both sets society against her, but also to a certain extent gives her some more freedom than other women, because she isn't expected to do the same things as other women. So Olive ends up like kind of becoming an artist and having this important career, and there's so much else going on in here, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and you have to read it, guys. It's genuinely one of the best Victorian novels I've ever read, and it makes me really sad that it's out of print. I've been trying to buy a physical copy for ages, to the extent that like I bought a physical copy at one point off Amazon, and it ended up being like A4 and with no indents in the paragraph. I don't know what this copy was or why it existed, but it was A4 and like just terrible. And I was looking everywhere for like just a physical copy of this book, because I know it's out of print. I knew I'd had to buy like a second-hand edition, but I just couldn't find like an actual book of Olive. And then someone on BookTube mentioned World of Books, which is a website I have never looked on before, and so I thought I would try there, and I did manage to get myself a second-hand copy of Olive finally. So I'm just very excited to own a physical copy of this book because I love it so much, and it means that every time I talk about it I like have something to wave at you, because I do talk about it a lot, and I will be talking about it a lot because it's genuinely brilliant, and I certainly want to reread it one day as well, so it's really nice to have a physical copy finally. So there we have it. Those are the 27 books that I have acquired of late, more than I would intend considering the lack of space in my life and my shelves and my flat. However, lots of really exciting books, some of which I've already read, some of which I'm very excited to get to. My TBR ever grows longer, and I really should concentrate on reading some of the books on my shelves rather than getting books out of the library and acquiring new books, but you know, we'll see how that goes. And that is all for now. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, if there's any that you would recommend I get to really, really soon. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.